Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay, because I've got a soft voice, so I need the microphone. So we'll just wait a minute before we start, probably because it's not quite 8. Does everyone have a mobile phone with them? Can everyone sort of just put it to silent for the 1 hour? Yeah, that's good. Okay, well, good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Fernandez. So I'm a student of Buddhism. So I've been studying Buddhism for, I think it's 35 years. So it's a long time. I've got no claim to have made any progress in those 35 years. However, I've got very good teachers. So the first one being the Venerable Geshe Doga, who's the resident teacher at Tara Institute. So I've been fortunate enough to be under his guidance for most of that time. And also one of the founders of the group of centres that Tara Institute belongs to, that's Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And my third main teacher is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So I've got good teachers, even though I'm not such a good student. Anyway, tonight I thought I'd cover a number of different topics that are covered in Buddhism. So some of you may have heard these before from other teachers, but I thought it would be good to go over them because it is an introduction to Buddhism after all. So you're going to get a Buddhist perspective from me over the next 5 weeks. And some of the topics I'll cover tonight, I'll cover in more detail in the weeks to come. So you might get a taste of something and think, oh, that wasn't very satisfactory. You only really got a brief glimpse into that. Well, there'll be more detail as we go through the next few weeks. So the first thing I thought I'd cover, it's a truism from Buddhism. So this one is, the Dalai Lama uses this sentence a lot. So it's all beings want happiness and don't want suffering. So it's all beings want happiness and don't want suffering. So that's us as humans, animals, other realms. So it covers every being. Even the little ant has some notion of happiness and wanting to avoid being trampled. So there's that at that level. And for us, we're a lot more complex, but we have the same drivers, if you like. We want happiness and we want to avoid any form of suffering. So in Buddhism, when we look for, normally forget Buddhism, just say, so normally when we look for happiness in the external object, whether it's a person or a possession or an experience. So that's the source of happiness for us, and that's why we grab at things. We sort of, oh yeah, if I have that meal, it'll make me super happy. If I listen to that music, it'll make me super happy. So there's a lot of grabbing at external things to make us happy. But in Buddhism, we actually teach that the mind is the source of happiness. So the external object has its place. And a good example is, if you're hungry starving, and someone says, "Oh, go and sit and meditate, it'll make you happy," you're probably going to struggle, aren't you? Because all you'll be thinking about is, well, an empty tummy and so on. So the external phenomena or they do play a part in happiness, but the main source of happiness from a Buddhist perspective is the mind. So if the main source of happiness is the mind, then where do you think the main source of the problems are? Anyone hazard a guess? The mind, yes. It's the mind, that's right. So again, even though the external object or phenomena has its part in driving the problem, a lot of the time, most of it, it's the mind's relationship or response to that situation. Whether that dictates whether it's problematic or not. So we can use examples from, say from Hollywood or something like that. It's probably, it's sort of like a super duper realm, isn't it? You're famous, you're rich, every step is followed. There's that. You have everything you could materially desire. People venerating you, etc. And then the flip side of that is there's a lot of anguish still. That those people who are in, say, Hollywood, not all of them are very well adjusted. You could say, that they still have neuroses, they still struggle with life, they still struggle for meaning. So that gives you, I guess, a good analogy of, materially wealthy, famous, venerated. They've got everything material that you'd think would make them happy, but still doesn't bring them any satisfaction by itself. But then conversely, there are people who don't have as much, but they're totally satisfied with what they have. So it's possible to utilise the strength of the mind to actually achieve happiness. So if the mind is the source of the problem, is there a way we can generate any happiness? If the mind, if the mind's problematic, it's got problems. Can those problems actually be solved or end, or is it an endless stream of problems? Would anyone like to have a hazard a guess on that one? The mind can turn it around. That's true. So, in Buddhism we use an analogy. So it's the sky. So the nature of the mind is like the sky, in that it's crystal clear, unpolluted, undefiled, and that these mental problems are like the clouds. So they're termed adventitious or temporary. So they merely obscure the nature of the mind, but those clouds can be lifted off or seen through or solved or resolved, etc., until you're left with just the sky. So it's important to actually have a good understanding of that right from the get-go, because if you think, oh well, now the mind's problematic, once the one problem's solved, another problem arises, it'll just keep happening, and there's no, the nature of the mind's problems. If you think that way, then that's mistaken. Enjoying the cloud, yeah. Well, if you have the right attitude towards it, you can certainly go, oh well, it's arisen, this nice meal, good friends. If you have the right attitude, it doesn't need to be problematic. So you just go, but then you're actually looking at more your response as opposed to the experience you're having externally. So you need to have the two things there. Clear understanding that the nature of the mind ultimately is like the sky, pure and clear, unpolluted, and we call that Buddha nature. So that's the potential of every being. So all those beings that wanted happiness and didn't want suffering, their ultimate nature is Buddha nature. So there's the potential to achieve that state of Buddhahood, permanent state. And the clouds are adventitious so they can be lifted off. So if an ant has Buddha nature and a human has Buddha nature, the ant has a problem because it doesn't have the conditions to do anything with that Buddha nature, because its mind is consumed with survival and being part of, avoiding being part of the food chain, and whereas a human has more capacity. Would everyone agree with that? Yep. A better sense of community, maybe. Yeah. Yep. So we have, I suppose, cognitively, we have the ability to think beyond where we are, huh? So that gives us a huge advantage. I don't want to put down ants. I'm just sort of, but it's just saying, the human being has so much potential. And so in Buddhism we also say that human life is very rare. So to achieve a life that's a human life is not the, when you look at all of existence, all that we can see, you say, well, there's definitely more animals than humans. So if you lift up a patch of grass or something, there's millions, tens of millions of insects and all the rest of it there, etc. So anyway, so to be, we say reborn in the human realm is quite rare, and then to be reborn in Australia, rarer still. And then, what have we got? We've got good food, clean water, no wars, no fighting, a roof over our heads. Generally those external things are pretty good for us. So we've got the environment, if you like, to make use of our human potential. So I'll just quote from the Venerable Geshe Doga. He's the resident teacher. So he said, "A peaceful mind is a happy mind." Does that ring true, or do you think no? You're nodding a lot, actually. That's very good. So, but yeah, does that make sense? If your mind's peaceful, you're generally happier. Yeah. So the opposite is if your mind's agitated, can you be happy, or would you be happy at that moment? No. Yeah, because the disturbed mind is what they call the affliction. The afflicted mind's arising, and that's what we can say is the analogy of the clouds. The dark clouds are obscuring that Buddha nature is like those afflicted minds that arise, and we can't seem to, when we're caught up in them, whether it's a moment of anger or jealousy, we can't see beyond that, and we just feel agitated and not peaceful at all. So with Buddhism, because the main focus is on the mind, there are three wisdom tools that we're trying to cultivate. So, and I'll cover these in the next few weeks. But the first one is listening to the teachings. So that's what you're doing tonight. So you're listening to the teachings. So that's one wisdom tool, and that it comes from you, not from the person who's conveying the teachings. So the second one is contemplating or thinking about the teachings. So that's done by you as well. So firstly you listen, and then you go and ruminate or toss it around in your head and work out, did that make sense? Is that right or is it wrong? Or if it makes no sense, then you just go, look, maybe it's not for me. But anyway, that's the second one, the second wisdom tool, contemplating or thinking about the teaching. And the third The third wisdom tool is meditation. So you need to do them in that order. So so we're going to do we'll do a very easy meditation. I think that, has everyone done some meditation before? Yep. Okay, we'll do a very easy meditation. So it'll give you the experience of the mind being at peace. So it's called breathing meditation. So if you like, this type of meditation clears away the obstacles and worries and afflictions, which we described before as clouds, and brings us a state of peace as the mind is at rest and its crystal clear nature is revealed. So the effect of the meditation initially, any good effect, it might be temporary. You might think, oh gee, well, while I was doing it, it was fabulous, but then as soon as I stopped, I didn't feel that good anymore. It didn't last. But one of the benefits of this type of meditation is as we get better at the meditation, the post-meditation positive effects become stronger. So that's good, because not many of us are going to sit for 24 hours a day in meditation, huh? So we need something that works while we've got the time, and then it has some positive spin-off effect as we go out of meditation and live the rest of our day, or day and night. So, okay? So we're only going to do the meditation for a short time, so it's better to do a short session of meditation, have a little bit of good focus, than sitting for hours going, oh, when is this going to finish? And I've got to meet someone tomorrow, for lunch. If your mind's doing that, it's not working. So it's better to do, a minute of meditation and have a little bit of focus than the opposite. Okay. And the other thing, and the Geshe Doga mentions this the other day, if you meditate for too long, and then it's a chore, it's like, oh, eventually you won't want to meditate at all, because you just think it's not doing anything, and I can do better things with my time. So short meditation's better, and Geshe Doga mentioned also more frequently when you're starting, and to stop when you're still enjoying it. When you've still got some clarity, just say, oh, okay, that's it, finish. And I thought that was very good advice. So, because it is a trap, isn't it? You see someone, they're in a full lotus posture, and they're sitting there and they're very stiff, and you're thinking, wow, they're going, I wish I could do that. And it's just like, well, but we don't know internally. They might be thinking about lunch with someone, who they're meeting, what do they have to do, etc. So anyway, better to do it short and sharp. So the most important thing is just to make yourself comfortable. So whether that's in a chair or on a cushion, and main thing is to try and keep your back straight. So you keep your mouth closed. So you're going to be breathing through your nose. And the focus of our meditation tonight is going to be on the breath. So you keep your hands gently on your lap. So in our tradition, the left hand's on the bottom and the right's on top. And then the thumbs are touching, pointing back towards the navel, like this. And it's said that this promotes a very nice circulation of energy through the body, doing that. And with your eyes, you don't want them completely closed, because then the tendency is to get drowsy. And you don't want them way open either, because then you get distracted. So you just want them slightly open so you get the impression of light. That's it. So let's just begin, and then we'll breathe gently through the nostrils. So really using a mental image of the breath going in and out through your nostrils. And then just imagine that, or visualize that as you're breathing out, all your anxieties, worries, concerns of the day are being removed. And as you're breathing in, you can let some beautiful enlightened energy come into you. And again, as you're breathing out, all those worries and concerns are moving away from you. And you can do that for a few moments until you feel its effects. And then switch the focus just back to the breathing gently through the nostrils. And try and keep your attention on that sensation. And we'll do that for a minute or two. And if your concentration wavers and you start thinking about other things, just gently, slowly bring the attention back to the breathing. So that when you feel comfortable, just bring your awareness back to the room and you can open your eyes. Okay, so that's the meditation in a nutshell, the breathing meditation. So very good, and the effects should be, as I was mentioned before, as you're doing it, you're able to meditate for a short, sharp period and feel good, then stop. And then if the next time you do it, maybe you can keep the duration the same and keep the same experience, positive experience. And then after a time, maybe increase it a little bit, not too much. And that's the way to do it. So you never get to the stage where it becomes a chore and you hate it. So, it's possible to not want to sit on the cushion and meditate, or sit in the chair and meditate. You just think, I can't do it anymore. It's too hard. So, so as you get good at it, then you'll notice the effect of the meditation after you get up is subtle but organic. So it's sort of like the meditation has a positive impact on your mind, and then post-meditation there's something changing. There's a cognitive change in you because of the meditation. So that's something to observe. So listening, so thinking about, a little bit about thinking about, how am I feeling now? Do I feel better or worse or a bit foggy or clearer, happier, calmer? So that's for you to do. So that's post-meditation. Have a look. Yep.
There are some people who are here for the first time. You might
Oh, the discriminating thoughts. Yeah, sure. Well, that's next actually. So, but anyway, so I'll come back to that point on discriminating thoughts. But it's important so you observe a little bit post meditation whether there's a change in you. And why can we do that? Because we're not robots. So we're very organic. So something we do in the meditation has an effect down the track. So if it was just feed the dog, and Pavlov's dog, feed the dog, and then the dog salivates the next time the food's put. We're not quite like that. So it's not response and effect. We're a little bit more. If we do something positive like meditation, we'll see something. We'll see some change in us. So the clouds, which is the afflicted emotions that cover the sky of our Buddha nature. So, what would some of those be? Would anyone like to have hazard a guess of what would an example of an afflicted emotion be? Jealousy, anger. Yep. Worry. They're all good. Have you got more? Greed, yes. Frustration, yes. Anxiety, yes, that's a big one, especially for us in the West. Maturely, we've got everything, so we worry. We worry about other things. So, attachment. Yep. So they're all very good examples of afflicted emotions, but it does raise the question, and are they all bad? And if they're bad, can they be removed? If you have jealousy, is it always a bad emotion to have? Who said that? You did. Why do you say that if you have anger or jealousy, it's always bad? It doesn't bring happiness. That's true. So, yes. Yeah, but quite often when jealousy is like, oh, I've got a friend, a colleague, a partner, someone I don't know, and suddenly they're thrust into a position of fame, fortune, wealth, recognition, and I'm not. So that emotion is always, as you mentioned, it's always an upsetting emotion. It's never for you as the experiencer. It's never a good feeling because you're feeling very disturbed by whatever recognition, elevation that person is receiving at that time. And it could be because they've done something really good, and people are going, oh, fabulous job, that's really good. But they could have done nothing and they still get the recognition and, the elevation, etc. So it's still, but then, and we're as observers, we look and go, oh, why is that person getting recognition and fame and, all the rest of it, and what about me? So at that point, there's no peace for you, for me. If I had that feeling at that time, it would just be being upset at that person's being up here and me being down there. And it also has a little bit of, I can't bear to see that person being happy. So that's pretty powerful, isn't it? Because we don't often like to think that we could think that way, but that's exactly what, at that point, we're thinking about when we look at that person. That person doesn't deserve that happiness. It's me. So we're really setting ourselves as well. We're trying to switch a little bit. So it's sort of, so in that respect of jealousy, and it's a good example because you can encounter it in every day-to-day situation. There's an opportunity for feeling jealous. It doesn't have to be just necessarily with your partner or significant other. It doesn't have to be that relationship. It could be at work, school, colleagues, friends, everywhere. There seems to be always an opportunity to look at someone and feel jealous about what they have. So, social media. Yeah. So I mean, that's social media. That's another topic for another week, I think. We could cover a whole week on a few weeks. We could do another 4 weeks on the impact of social media. It's that powerful. So, but just coming back to the afflicted mind of jealousy, we could look at someone on Facebook or Instagram, or what else is there? Snapchat? Really? Okay, Snapchat. So you could look, so all those, you could see someone and go, gosh, they're well off, and recognise, and look how thin they are, and geez. And immediately you could feel, but it should be me, that can arise very quickly. So, Actually, with social media, there's another thing that's very common. It's, what are they, trolls? So there's an article about someone, and then they invite comments. And the comments, sometimes they're really undercutting the person who the article's about, so you sort of think, so it's very nasty. It's that opportunity to really go, so anyway. But that's not good either. It's not a good. That's just using that situation to throw something terrible at someone from the anonymity of your keyboard. So anyway, not good. But there's no peace for that troll, is there? Or would anyone say that the troll is getting some sort of happiness out of that? No. What they're engaging in is not going to bring them, even at the time, is not bringing them happiness. Afterwards, it won't bring them happiness. But the flip of that is the person they're trolling, or if they looked at their comments, they wouldn't feel good either. So there's sort of a double-edged thing going on there. So. So if we have these afflicted minds, discursive thoughts, I think that's a term Geshe Doga uses, that we have these discursive thoughts when we're going about our day, and they lead to these afflicted emotions. And then the afflicted emotion brings the unpleasant experience, and that brings us no peace. And if we have no peace, according to Geshe Doga, we don't have the happiness, because we're agitated at that point. So this comes back to my earlier point. So if we have these afflicted emotions, can we get rid of them? Yes? You're confident we can? Yep. Okay. Yep. Well, from a Buddhist perspective, that's the answer. Yes, you can get rid of them. So with the breathing meditation, it temporarily causes the mind to be focused on something other than the afflicted mind, which brings you peace, because you're not worried about that person. She's got everything, and I've got nothing. You're not thinking. You're bringing your focus back onto the breath. So just for that temporary, that few minute or two that you're doing the breathing meditation, your focus has moved away from that. So you've got peace. You've got happiness. And then afterwards, when you encounter that experience or person again, it mightn't be as sharp. So that person can still be there, but it might not arouse in you that same level of anxiety or jealousy or whatever. So it takes time. It's not like, oh, it happens like that. You know, I've done my meditation and the whole day is going to be super smooth, and so, but it does work. So that's the beauty of that method. So in Buddhism we also use the analogy of the doctor, the patient, and the medicine. So we look to the Buddha as the doctor. So the Buddha is being a human being just like ourselves, with the problems that we have, but being able to overcome those, realising his Buddha nature and removing the afflictions, the afflicted minds, and achieving that state of Buddhahood. So the ultimate state of that Buddha nature is that enlightened state of Buddhahood. So that we're relying on the enlightened being or the teacher to be there as the doctor. So to diagnose, oh well, this is your particular set of problems, and then we recognise ourselves as the patient. So we have to have that too. So why would we have to recognise ourselves as the patient? This is a good one for the men in the room, because they don't go to the doctors very often. But what's the definition of a patient? Someone who's sick. So yeah, you have to have some recognition that you're sick, otherwise you won't go to the doctor. So that's a good one, isn't it? Because you think, oh well, I know I'm all right, she'll be right, I won't go, I won't see the doctor. So from a Buddhist perspective, you go, no, you have to have some recognition that, oh no, it's not quite right. There's something more. I can do something to make it better. So you go to the doctor, or the Buddha, or the teacher in this case. So, and then the middle one is the medicine. So the medicine. What would the medicines be if you're a Buddhist? Positive thinking, yes, that's one. Compassion, meditation, yes. Loving kindness, yes. That's your end state. Yes, that's right. But to get there, you need all those medicines. So all the things that people have mentioned. So they're called the Dharma, or the spiritual teachings. So the catch-all is it will cover all those things that you mentioned. So you need those three things: doctor, the medicine, and you need the patient. Which one comes first? The patient. Yes, that's right. So the other two are good, but they're no use if the patient decides that all's well, I don't need this, I'm out of here. So there needs to be some recognition. Well, it's not quite all well. It could be better. And where do I go to get that? Get the cure or the fix. So when the Buddha achieved enlightenment, he was born in a royal family in India, or northern India, and he led a very cloistered or sheltered life. So his father sort of stopped him from going outside the palace walls. So he never saw old age, sickness, death, or even birth. He's completely like cloistered. So all he saw was, everyone's happy, everyone's healthy, everyone's wealthy, no one's dying. There's no suffering. Until he went out from the palace walls and he saw that, well, all those things are actually occurring everywhere, and there's no escape. Even though he's in this golden sort of cell, he could see that wasn't where he wasn't actually the way that people existed. So from that he realised, well, there's suffering in the world, and from that he went through many sort of years of trying this technique and that technique to try and work out, well, if I can find the source of suffering, how do I lift it? And then eventually he worked out this middle way path, free of any extreme. So he sort of said the human being has that potential; they can achieve full enlightenment. And once he achieved that as a human being, then he after a while he started teaching to other students, and then after a time some of them became enlightened, and that's how Buddhism, it's almost 3,000 years, has come down today. So we have that lineage, if you like, of the Buddha's teachings here. So we're quite fortunate. So that means it's quite an old lineage or religion. In fact, some people say it's more of a psychology than a religion, because most of the focus is back on the mind and how can you transform the mind? What's the nature of the mind? So those are big questions. So they're not really like, I can answer that in two. There's quite a bit of thinking. It's quite a little bit of it's quite deep. What's the nature of the mind? Is it pure and clear, or is it clouds? Does it like to think about it and go, is it? So again, sorry, do you have a question? Will they bring us happiness? Is that what you say? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So. Yes. Yes.
Is that positive to just feed your mind with positive exposure, like not watching so many bad news or I don't know.
Yeah. So there's a good question you have. So it's really around. You're saying nourishing your body with food, and then nourishing your mind with positive things, and steering them away from things that are detrimental or harmful to the mind. Yes, that's. Yes. Yep. Yeah. Yes. Definitely there is a case for that, particularly as beginners when we're sort of starting out. If we think, oh well, I can generate this. Someone mentioned the word compassion. I can generate this super fabulous compassion for every being in the world. Bring it on. I can take on the. So I can take on the suffering. And at my level, say if I had that thought, I'd fall in a heap, because if someone tested that and said, well, give me this and give me, I'd go, oh, I actually don't have that much compassion. You know, the sort of, at my level, it's sort of like, it's overwhelming to do that. So you need to nurture that positive mind, and you do that through the wisdom tools, listening, thinking about, and then meditation. So, and then what you notice is your capacity, and this is what I mentioned before, there's a cognitive change through those things, through doing these things, that you actually become more open-hearted, warmer towards others. You feel better. So all those things happen again organically. You know, you're not trying to squeeze too hard, but you're trying to cultivate and protect. But you need to do. You've made a good point. You need to protect your mind a little bit. And I find the same. If I watch too much SBS news, the whole hour, I go, oh, the world's terrible. You know, you go, because they focus on the whole world, but invariably it's a, you know, disaster, war, calamity, disease, you know, until they get to at the end where it's the weather. And even that, you know, cyclone, you know, hurricane, so you go global warming, you know, it's sort of like, so you think, oh, so there's just an hour's, if you like, worth of the cycle of life, and you're going, oh. So there's a little bit of that where you go, okay, I can take a bit, and then maybe it's detrimental for too much to have it just overwhelming me. So, and that's a little bit of wisdom, isn't it? To have some wisdom to go, well, at my level, I can't take too much, but as I get better, I can handle more.
Isn't that why the
Well, he wanted to see it. He wanted to see it, and then he realised where he was completely unreal. You know, in the palace, where it was like, you know, no death, no birth, no suffering, no sickness, no old age. I think when he saw an old man outside the walls, he didn't know what that was, because he'd never been exposed to an old person. So he from that though, he had that curiosity or to go, oh, I'm going to find out more, you know. And then if this is all suffering and it's endemic to being human, that you're going to go through these states, what's the way out? You know, is there a way out? So fortunately for us, he kept going. He didn't get despondent or discouraged. He kept going. He had the tools, yeah. But his tools are the same as ours. You know, listen and think about, and then meditation. And then his compassion rose, his wisdom rose. He was able to lift those afflicted minds away, see through them, and achieve that state of enlightenment. So that's so we've covered quite a bit of material actually. So does anyone have any other questions? Yes?
You mentioned before about the increase in anxiety, particularly in the West, and so that impacted, I guess, depression and all that as well.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned also social media, of course, and how that could play that sort of stuff. Do you have a sort of a theory on why those things have increased in the West so much?
Well, there is a term, and I don't like it, it's called the worried well. Has everyone heard of that? So it's a psychological or sociological term. So it's because we have materially, you know, we've got food, clothing, shelter, you know, some form of wealth. We've got those things. So because we're still a little bit agitated, we look for something else to be worried about. You know, we're not satisfied with this. So we're sort of looking for other things to be worried about. Anxious, anxiety. So that rises, and depression's another thing. It's a different phenomenon, but that anxiety is definitely there, and it definitely seems to be more prevalent in the West. In the Eastern societies, they don't seem to have that type of anxiety that we seem to suffer from. So they still have it, but it's from other things. So it's sort of so also there's a little bit of, because we've got everything material, pretty, then it's easy to look at the external thing and say, oh, that's the source of happiness. And then you start comparing, oh, I've got this much, but she's got more. Or my neighbour got a new car and I've got my old car. There's a little bit of that. So even if there's that constant looking and comparing that sets us up for dissatisfaction, which leads to the anxiety again. I'm anxious about this and that, and so. And again, with Buddhism, they're not so worried about the external, the car or the house. Or there's no problem with those objects. It's more the mental attitude towards them. So it can be good, source of enjoying your friends over a nice meal in a restaurant or wherever. That's a perfectly valid form of happiness, isn't it? But you can make it more an anxious sort of experience. Oh, what if the person I'm bringing doesn't like the restaurant I've chosen? And this, we overdo it, overthink sometimes. I think there's a common thing in the West, overthinking something. Does everyone relate to that? So in other cultures they don't tend to do that. They have other problems, but it's that's one we have a lot, where we overthink it. So, and that leads to a lot of problems, because generally the reality is nowhere near what we're thinking. Catastrophize, is that the term? Catastrophize, yes. Oh, what if this happened and then that happened, and then it becomes a disaster, and then it's like, oh, and that becomes so real in your mind that you can't even think straight. You're so worried. And then it doesn't happen like that, perhaps. So ungrateful, yes, there's a bit of that too. But anyway, in Buddhism we're sort of trying to say, well, if you have, we're lucky, fortunate, we should look at life like that. And that having a positive attitude actually helps. So that's another, if you like, another tool of Buddhism, to have that positive mind. So how good is that mind? A positive mind? Positive motivation? Does anyone like to hazard a guess? Yes? Or? Yes. So I'm very yes, but I'm very lazy or forgetful. So I try and set a good motivation in the morning when I wake up. As good as I can do it. I'm going to be really trying my best to do this or that. Okay, and then let that let that be the momentum for the day. Because I'm not very good at coming back to it and going, oh, I've got to lift my motivation because it seems to have sagged. But if I can set it in the morning, it seems to have some momentum. And the opposite's true as well. If you wake up with this is overthinking. Oh, it's going to be a disaster of a day. I've got this to do and that to do, and then what will the day be? Will it be good? It might be, but invariably though, if you're starting off with that mind, that mental state, whatever you encounter, is it going to be positive? Negative, that's right. It'll be, because you've coloured it already with that overthinking, then whatever you encounter, you'll have a negative veil over it. It'll be like, so even if someone's offering you a compliment or something, you'll look at it as are they really complimenting me, or are they trying to criticise me in the guise of a compliment, or what do they want from me? You look at it in a totally negative way. even to a positive experience. Anyway, that's the power of the mind. So that's just in the morning. So if you can establish a good motivation in the morning, it has its own momentum. And then if you combine it with these wisdom tools, then you're developing. You're developing the tools to lift those clouds, and then you can have this clarity, this clear, peaceful mind that Geshe Doga talks about. The peaceful mind being the happy mind. So does that anyway? I'm going to ask a naysay question. Does that sound doable, or too highfalutin, or too unachievable? Yep.
I think it depends on how much suffering, like how many clouds in the sky.
Yes. So if you reckon, so if you think there's too many clouds, then it's no way you can remove them.
Or if it's harder.
Harder. Okay. I'll just answer. I'll have a go at that. So that's a good question, because if we've got so many clouds that we can't see the sky, are those clouds movable? Transform. Yes.
Wouldn't it be if you identified with the clouds
Mm-hmm.
or in the sky,
Mm-hmm.
then you would suffer more. But if you identified with the sky
Yes.
as being you
Yes.
and just observe the clouds, you would suffer less.
That's right. That's a very good answer. So that it goes right to the point of the Buddha nature. So the human being, I'm using human being because that's what we are. We have Buddha nature. So if you have to have that recognition of Buddha nature in yourself and in others, but when you're looking at you, you're going, in myself, in me, there is that Buddha nature. So even though there's problems and afflictions, ultimately, once those afflictions are gone, it's pure and clear and happy. So even if there are lots of afflicted emotions, they can be moved. And that's what happens with this clouds in the sky anyway, doesn't it? When you have lots of thick clouds and storms and all that, eventually it clears. It does in Australia anyway. If you're living in, was it foggy old London or something, it could be raining for 12 months of the year or something like that, but you know what I mean? That example's there, so you eventually, and that's because the afflictions and the Buddha nature are not the same. They're not like that. The afflictions are adventitious, so they can be removed, and the Buddha nature is the crystal clear state of the mind. Organic. Yeah.
The afflictions sometimes could remind you of having these problems with my house or with my kids, but I'm grateful to have had my kids.
Yes. Yep.
So
Yep.
transform.
Transform. Yep. Yep. Yeah. So all this takes time. There was when Buddhism was brought to Tibet, there were two schools of enlightenment. So one was instantaneous enlightenment, like that. So you didn't have to get too many teachings. You didn't have to study. You didn't have to do much meditation. It was just like that. You got the realization of not emptiness, enlightenment, like that. Snap. And then the second school was a path school. Or the second view was a path view, like, oh, it's a graduated path to enlightenment. You start off small, recognition of yourself as the patient, visit the doctor, take the medicine, and then you develop along the path, and eventually you get to enlightenment. So there was a debate which view would prevail in Tibet. So they debated, and then the instantaneous one lost. It didn't hold up to scrutiny. That no effort, enlightened. That would be the best one, though, wouldn't it? we didn't have to do anything, but we achieved full happiness. So, but anyway, so graduated path. So that means from where we are, we can get to that. So that's very good to hold. Do you have a question?
You said before, in your experience at the start of the day, sometimes set a bar or something to do. And in my experience, it's the same. But with positive affirmations, how are they referred to within Buddhism? Is there such a term?
Give me an example of a positive affirmation.
Well, if you're feeling sick, say I am, it's a positively worded statement, I am strong, healthy and well. Gradually that becomes like an imprint on your mind. Is there something equivalent to that?
No, it's more like,
But I guess what you would
yeah,
do is basically an affirmation.
it's an affirmation. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this today. So I'll use one. I'll use an example, and this could be this is not for me. This is one that I've heard that's very good. May every being that I encounter, I see them as a friend. So if you have that as your thought, motivation, what would that do to your day? If you could hold it, like that. It would completely change your experience, wouldn't it? Because you wouldn't be seeing someone as a potential threat, enemy, or, hostile, whatever. You'd just be seeing them, as a friend. So you'd be warm-hearted towards them. That would be your immediate response, regardless of what they were doing. So that's one that I would, if you'd like to take through, have that at the beginning, and then that would be what you'd encountered through the day. And it might be that someone yells at you, but you don't get the same sharp response back from your side. Just a little bit more, that's a friend saying that. It's okay, I'll let it wash.
Can you be attached to emotion?
Oh yeah, I think,
To material things?
of course.
I'm strong, but you're so attached to that and you don't feel strong and you break down.
You can, I think, we have a lot, and we can be attached to a lot. So, but in Buddhism they give you the tools to go, well, all right, I have the phone, I need the phone, I love the phone, I can't do without the phone. And then eventually you go, well, I've lost my phone. I have to be able to do, have to be able to survive, have to be able to thrive and survive without so there is that thing of you trying to see through a little bit. Is it really that? Is it really the source of all happiness, or is it coming from me, my approach to it? And if it's coming from my approach to the phone, if I can find it, sorry, then it's all right to have the phone, because I can sort of see, well, it's a tool, it's necessary, but
So what if the phone is happiness?
well, that's where you go, well, it's more coming from the mind than the phone. The happiness, the phone's just the external thing that's there, but the happiness is really coming from this side, from here, this one. So you go, and that's with anything. Sorry?
Yeah,
We choose. Yeah, you choose the response. So you go, okay, so we might stop there. It's 9 o'clock, so we'll stop on a high then, huh? So maybe we'll do 1 minute of meditation, so we can. So we'll just do the same as before, a little bit of meditation. So make yourself comfortable, straight back, mouth closed, eyes with just slightly open, and then you keep your hands on your lap, the right hand on top of the left, your thumbs touching, pointing back towards the navel. And the focus again is the breathing through your nostril. So you're really using a mental image of the breathing. And then just start by breathing in the enlightened energy, and then breathing out all your anxieties, worries and concerns. And do that for a few moments. And then just switch your focus to the sensation of the breath going in and out through your nostrils. And then just try and keep your attention on that sensation for a minute or two. Okay, so just gently bring your awareness back to the room, and you can open your eyes. Okay, so thank you everyone. We'll hope that was useful. So it's just after 9 o'clock, so you are welcome to go into the lounge for a cup of tea and biscuits. So otherwise I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.